Bourbon County from Goose Island. Intense aroma of charred oak, vanilla, caramel, and smoke. Welcome back to the Tapping Out Show. My name is Jeremy. This is Matt, and we're going to do Goose Island's Bourbon County. This is actually something that we've seen a lot of and had no idea that we could get it so easily. Just for the sheer fact that this is a higher end, barreled stout is going right up my alley. So
yeah. I'm looking forward to this beer. We were just reading a top 100 list of some of the top beers. I think this was rated number 6. I was like, I see this all the time at the liquor store. We haven't tried it yet. One of the local beer caves that we were at, and I was like, why haven't we tried this yet? So when we went there today, I asked what they had. They have a 2015 left, so that's pretty good. It's supposed to be a pretty good year of this vintage here. So let's see. I'm actually interested, especially with the vanilla, caramel, smoke, charred oak. I mean, if we were talking about food, I would love that. So I mean, I'm kind of wondering how that's going to lay out in being a big barbecue guy myself. Just kind of wondering how that's going to lay out in a beer.
Well, let me get that real quick. I'm going to crack this open.
And like I said, I think it was rated pretty highly on a few different websites and things that we were looking at. So it definitely...
Keep in mind, this is a 2015 vintage. There is a 2016 vintage out. So each vintage obviously is different because these are specialties. They do them in different barrels. They do them in different batches. Not saying that the formula is any different. That's with anything, brewery that does specialty. We did one on Sakava that was a different vintage than any other.
Yeah. And you never know, one you might like a little bit better than the other. But if you like one, I always suggest trying the other one just to see how it kind of tastes. If it's something you're into and you kind of know what it tastes like. Let's see how it tastes.
So off the bat, like I said, 14.3 alcohol, 60 IBU. The smell itself, and we're both stepped up right now.
It's pretty dark as well.
You can smell a lot of the malt. You can smell the charred barrel for sure. It's definitely
one thing I will say about it is it is barrel aged, right? But it doesn't give off that vapor like some of these barrel aged that we've tried where, if you're of faint heart, you might pass out from some of that vapor because that's pretty crazy stuff. I mean, you light a match next to that, it feels like it's going to blow up. This actually...
Well, I mean, you can smell the barrel. Like,
I don't smell the caramel, the smoke or anything, but I do... I can tell that the vapor isn't what we're used to. Sometimes, like I said, you almost have to let it breathe a little bit, but this doesn't have as much of that bourbony vapor. Not even a smell, but like vapor coming off of it.
Well, like from a color spectrum, I mean, obviously this is towards the 90s for sure, if not 100. I mean,
this is 98, 99, 100, 101, something like that. I mean, this is dark, not a lot of head on it. I couldn't tell if there was sediment in there. Right. I mean, there could be coins in there, and I wouldn't be able to tell. But it's definitely definitely a good malt. Let's see what this tastes like here.
Cheers. You can taste the bourbon charred barrel for sure.
Yeah.
You can taste the heavy malt for sure. I don't really taste caramel. I don't really taste
the smoke or any of that. I can't kind of catch a hint of it on the back end. I would say from some of the bourbon barrel aged stuff that we've had, this is one of the better ones. But if you can't handle bourbon, then I would probably not try this. I mean, it's pretty. I mean, we know sometimes they say bourbon barrel aged. I mean, this tastes like bourbon in beer, which
Yeah.
is, you know, I mean, we like bourbon and we like beer, so I mean, this isn't a bad thing, but you know, because how I said before, it doesn't have that vapor of bourbon. It definitely has
The taste.
the taste of bourbon.
I mean, I can kind of taste the vanilla. The caramel still kind of eludes me a little bit, just a little bit. The smoke, I mean, obviously you taste the smoke because it's charred barrels.
I can see why this beer is so popular. I definitely can. I mean, bourbon's really popular these days, and I mean, bourbon's been popular since the cowboy days, right? But I mean, a lot of people like bourbon. I mean, I've been drinking bourbon for a long time. I mean, it's not like my regular drink, right? But I mean, you know, most Americans have you know, had some bourbon in their time, and you know, and it's more bourbon than beer, though, I would say. First off, would you say this beer lives up to the hype?
No.
Okay, that was my first question.
There has been 2 other beers that we've even done videos on that are barrel-aged,
Wow.
bourbon barrel-aged, that I would say are way better than this beer. Not saying this isn't a good beer. It's just not as good as some of the other ones that have this same flavor.
Yeah,
We love Black Market Brewery. Right?
Yeah.
Black Market Brewery makes a barrel-aged imperial stout called Dimitri. Would you say this is better or worse than Dimitri?
See, for me, I can't really even put them in the same classification because this one tastes more like bourbon than any other bourbon barrel aged
Okay.
beer that I've had.
The concept of this is it's a beer.
True, yeah, it
Okay.
is.
So I want to taste a beer with a hint of these ingredients.
Yeah,
But instead, I taste these ingredients and a hint of beer. And I'm not taking anything away from the beer because, like you said, if that's your flavor. All right, so Jamie's here. She's going to try this only because we're going to try to get a fresh perspective. So you've had the beers that we're talking about. You've had the Dark Lord stuff. You've had the Black Market stuff. You've had.
Because every time I film them, I always take a sip afterwards if there's some left over, because I want to try it too and see what they're talking about. And this one, I have to kind of agree with Matt in that I can't compare it to like Dimitri, because it's not the same really. I would actually prefer Dimitri over this one just because
I
it
would too.
tastes like, it doesn't really taste like, it tastes like a syrupy imitation flavor of bourbon as opposed to the bourbon barrel that you get from Dimitri. This one, it's like they're trying too hard for this one.
Okay.
Where-
And you know what? I can see where you're going, because this goes back to what Matt said about the vapors. Most of the beers we get that are bourbon aged, whiskey aged, scotch, whatever, you can open the bottle, pour it out in the glass, and you can seriously smell the vapors of the alcohol that have been sediment inside the barrels.
For this, I would recommend the person that hasn't really quite ventured out into drinking bourbon barrel aged beers yet, and it's kind of like, for me, it seems like almost like a liqueur where they're like, hey, this is bourbon flavored, so try this out first.
I agree.
But it really is like an intro to the bourbon barrel beers, because if you want that flavor, it definitely has that, and I can taste like the caramel, the thickness of it is probably where it comes from, but definitely I've had other, like, he's really into the bourbon flavored beers, and
I love them.
I prefer them more than this. I think this is like definitely an intro bourbon barrel beer.
I'm going to say not only do I agree that this doesn't live up to the hype, but what she said about being like kind of a starter point for anybody who does the bourbon barrel stuff, the alcohol content in this is not necessarily the best concept for someone to try new bourbon aged barrel beer. Well, let's wrap it up. So we're undecisive. I'm not saying I hate it. I'm not saying I like it. I'm saying for what it tells you it is, it literally is exactly what it tells you it is.
I have to like agree with Jeremy. It's if that is what you're looking for, then that's definitely what you're gonna get. But since I've had other ones where maybe I'm just more inclined to it, or maybe I just like the thickness just rubs me the wrong way, I'm just gonna have to say it's like maybe a 3.5.
See, I'm going to go a little higher. I'm going to say 3.75-ish. But that goes back to the fact that here on Tapping Out Show, we really have had some true bourbon barrel aged beers. I mean, that's my opinion.
I say 3.5.
3.5. Okay, so Matt says 3.5.
I agree with Jamie, a little bit lower than Jeremy, and only because I've heard so much about it. It's so hyped up.
You thought it was going to be better.
Yeah.
Well, no, not even that. It's just some of the barrel aged stuff that we've done. I prefer.
And it's clean.
It's just, this is a little bit more bourbon-y, which, like I said, if that's what you're looking for, this is your beer.
Yeah.
But I would definitely say 3.5 is what I would rate it at.
So here's the thing. We got mixed reviews on this. It doesn't happen often. We usually like the stuff we pick. We picked this because people have talked about it. We saw it on a list. We saw it on people's Instagram, whatever. If you don't like the way we rated this, tell us. info@tappingoutshow.com. We're going to post this, obviously. But if you want to follow us in any social media, that's Tapping Out Show, all one word. Besides that, we're not going to finish this. I actually think all three of us are tapping out. And see you guys later.